Hi everyone, hope you're doing well wherever you are, wherever you're watching this right now. Um, you probably noticed my hairdo's a bit different. Yeah, I've been working on it, kind of behind closed doors. As you can see, yeah, it's coming on pretty well. Feels like, how it was about kind of 30 years ago, 40 years ago. No, seriously, obviously without a barber, all the barbers being closed, I had to cut my own hair yesterday. Yeah, didn't go quite as well as I planned, and so I thought I'd just supplement my hair a little bit with a bit of help from my wig, my dress up wig. But I'm going to take it off 'cause it's probably a bit distracting. But you can see, yeah, my hair went a bit shorter um, than I planned, and so I'm having to, yeah, good job we're in self isolation, so my hair doesn't come out in public right now. Anyway, welcome to this latest video cast, and we're going to be together today just for a few minutes looking at one of the Psalms. Um, I've been reading the Psalms lots in these days and found them to be just the most remarkable source of strength, of hope, of helping me to keep my eyes on the Lord, on His promises and what He says and what He's like. And I do believe if you're not doing so already, turn to the Psalms. They're just tremendously encouraging and helpful at this time. So we're going to look at Psalm 121 today. Really well known, famous psalm. I'm sure many of you have been reading it. And the title simply for today is Where Does Our Help Come From? Um, Really, the kind of like the title almost of this psalm. Um, the question being is, does our help come from the government? Does it come from friends or family? Does it come from our work, from our bank account? Does it come from the NHS? And obviously, yes, it does come from all of those things, but where does our help really come from when we begin to question or we haven't got such easy access to those things? So this Psalm 121, it's one of a group of Psalms called the Psalms of Ascent, and they were probably collected together to be used during the annual trip or pilgrimage up to Jerusalem for the Jewish nation. And this psalm, because of that, is sometimes called the journey psalm because it kind of suggests a kind of movement or travel. And it would have been used as an encouragement to people who were braving the dangerous roads up to Jerusalem. So open a Bible if you've got one to Psalm 121. I'm just going to read it. I've got the ESV, English Standard Version, but any version you've got, they obviously all say much the same thing. Okay, Psalm 121. It says, I lift my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. So it's clear that the psalmist here, the writer, is obviously looking for help. The implication is that he was in some kind of anxiety or distress. So relevant then for this particular time that we're in, for us and for our neighbours and for our whole nation, in fact, when there is such anxiety potentially and distress and uncertainty. And when all the normal routines and pattern of things that we're normally so dependent on for our help are not quite so dependable right now. When an economic system or our jobs or getting goods and supplies and even freedom of movement, doing what we want and going where we want and doing those things when we want, all of these things that we normally take for granted are now suddenly called into question, like as the kind of normal pattern of things is sort of feels so disrupted. Now the psalmist here is not promising the absence of pain or even of failure, but what he is promising is that in the midst of anxiety and uncertainty, and in the midst of this adversity and difficulty, we can be absolutely confident in a God who is watching over us, and a God whose promise is to protect us. So the beginning of the psalm then has the writer um, lifting his eyes to probably the most stable and secure thing that the people at that time would have known. And these were the hills and the mountains around Jerusalem that would have been very, very visible and prominent in their journey up to the city. And the mountains, they represent a symbol of strength and stability because they're so great in size and in stature, because they're long lasting and they're unchanging. In fact, probably the mountains or the hills around Jerusalem would have been the greatest natural thing they would have known. And every year on their journey up to Jerusalem, the mountains were there. They were kind of unchanging, and they would have been there for their fathers and their fathers' fathers, and they were things on which you could depend. They were dependable, those mountains. But the thing is that we know that mountains can't actually do anything to help us. This is captured really well in the Passion translation of these first verses that says, I look up to the mountains and hills, longing for the Lord's help. But then I realize that our true help and protection come only from the Lord, our Creator, who made the heavens and the earth. And the scriptures, they're loaded with references to God as the actual creator of the mountains. I just picked off one from Amos 4:13 that says, For behold, he who forms the mountains and creates the winds and declares to man what is his thought, who makes the morning darkness and treads on the heights of the earth, the Lord, the God of hosts, is his name. And even though the mountains are big and they're majestic, and there are lots of references actually throughout Scripture, throughout the Bible, about how awesome and how powerful and how great God is in relation to these mountains. Just here's a couple of examples. One from the minor prophet Nahum 1:5. It says, "The mountains quake before him, the hills melt, the earth heaves before him, the world and all who dwell in it." And then from Micah 1, verse 4, it says, "And the mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will split open like wax before the fire, like waters poured down a steep place." These are amazing, evocative pictures, like mountains melting like wax before a fire, like water just kind of falling away, like water running down a steep place. These mountains that look so big. This is just comparing what these mountains are next to our mighty, powerful, awesome God. It helps us to understand where our eyes and our focus should be at this time. There is something really valuable about taking your eyes off yourself, because when we are in trouble, what we can tend to do, bizarrely, when we're in trouble, we tend to look to our own resources and our faces tend to be downcast. And looking to hills and mountains are actually symbolic of looking to a higher place, of lifting our head and lifting our eyes and looking up. They're symbolic of looking up to something higher than us. But friends, these are the days when we need to look to the Lord, for only He is the true source of our help. We need to consider what Jehoshaphat did. Do you remember Jehoshaphat, when that story in 2 Chronicles 20, when he was faced with huge enemy armies against him, and they were desperate times, and he said, as he looked at the uncertainty of how things are going to unfold, and he said, "Lord, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you." And then in verses 3 to 8 in this psalm today, they tell us how God helps us. It's wonderful. We find 6 times in these verses 3 to 8, 6 times God is called our keeper, or the one who keeps us. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the keep in a castle. Many of you know that all castles have a keep, and the keep is like the inner stronghold. It's like the safest place in the castle. It's the strongest place in the whole fortress and the place of the greatest refuge where people went in times of attack or times of trouble. You know, what the psalm is saying is that God is like our keep. But the great thing is, he's not like a passive kind of keep, like a passive place in a castle where people can run to in times of trouble because it's safe. It's safe because of the fortifications. No, that God is actually, he's an active keeper. He's a guardian God. You know, we talk about guardian angels, but do you know we have a guardian God? A guardian God who watches over us and always watches over us because he never slumbers and he never sleeps. And as we journey through life on difficult paths, and you know, it feels right now we're on a difficult path. You know, the paths we're walking on as individuals, as a nation, they're difficult paths. And it says here, he stops our feet from slipping on difficult paths. It says, another thing it says he shades us from harm. You know, I love that you think about this. You think everywhere we go, our shadow follows us. Our shadow follows us in all places and at all times. And you think about God, it talks about shade here. Other places in the Bible, it talks about God sheltering us under the shadow of his wings. And so too, God shadows us at all times and in all circumstances. You know, even the mention of the moon at night. Why is the moon in there? Thinking about this, well, the moon has associations with madness and with insanity. That's where we get the term moonstruck, or the term we use more often, the term lunatic. You know, the term lunatic, it comes from the Latin word luna, meaning moon. You know, so there's association with the moon and kind of insanity and difficult mental health. And you know, this is saying that God watches over our mental health. Even our subconscious minds, he's protecting. He's protecting them right now. It says that God is the keeper of our whole life. He watches over our soul, even in the deepest place, even the deepest place of our soul. He's watching over it. He knows us in the deepest way because he made us and formed us and knew every one of our days before one of them came to be. He knew about this virus. He knew about the effect it would have on us right now. And he is right now watching over our soul and guarding our lives. And I love this reference to the going out and the coming in, that he's watching over our going out and our coming in. You know, we're in so much at the moment, and going out feels more risky than usual. But it says he's watching over our going out, and it's okay because he's our guardian God. And whatever uncertainty we live in, however long this is going to last, what about my job? Will the supplies run out? How will this affect the economy? What about the future? The psalm says, God will keep us now and from this time forth and forevermore. So, in these troubled times, where are you looking for your help? Are you looking to the hills, to the government, to the NHS, to the authorities, to the experts? God would say, look higher. Look higher. Look to the one who put all these things in place, who is over all these earthly things. The Lord Almighty is our help. He's our guard. He's our keeper. He's our protector, both now and forevermore. Of that we can be certain and we can be confident. Have a fantastic day, whatever you're doing.